My name was Hamza. I was a Quran teacher, respected, disciplined, feared even in some circles. By the age of 23, I had memorized most of the Quran, led prayers in the mosque, and trained the next generation to follow the path I thought was divine. I was proud of who I was, until one moment of silence changed everything. And then, I died. Not in the physical sense at first, but inside, something collapsed. What began as a question from a child turned into a full-blown crisis of faith. And later, during what I can only describe as a near-death experience, I left my body, and I met the one they never told me about, Jesus. He didn't come to debate theology. He came to reveal a spiritual war, a battle that's been raging long before I was born. He showed me how a hidden agenda has infiltrated not only religion, but global systems, media, governments, even education. Behind it all, a spiritual elite working to deceive and destroy humanity, using fear, shame, and control. And here's what shook me most. I realized I hadn't been serving God. I had been serving a system. That's when the awakening began. Not just mine, but what I now believe is happening across the world. People everywhere are waking up, seeing through the lies, feeling the weight of truth pressing against their chest like a voice saying, "You were made for more." So, in this video, I'll take you through how one verse, just one, sparked my escape from deception and led me to a truth far more dangerous and far more beautiful than I ever imagined. Before we begin, leave a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now where you are? I want to know how far this truth is reaching, and if you're beginning to see through the fog, subscribe now to Truth from Beyond. Because what I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's a revelation, and the next chapter is coming soon. I was known in my neighborhood as Ustad, Hamza. By the time I turned 23, I had memorized nearly the entire Quran and was teaching kids at the local madrasa, including my own cousins. My father used to tell people I was the pride of our lineage, proof that we were chosen by Allah. I believed that too. I needed to believe it, because if it wasn't true, then what was I giving my whole life to? I clung to obedience like a lifeline, fasting even when I was sick, waking before dawn every single day to bow, recite, and discipline my flesh. But looking back now, I can tell you, my devotion had more fear than love, and it all began to crack when a 9-year-old boy asked me something that would change everything. He pointed at Surah 434 and said, "Why does it say a man can beat his wife?" I froze. My mouth moved, but my soul went silent. That moment haunted me. It felt like the start of a near-death experience, like something inside me had died. I tried to bury it, of course. Told myself he misunderstood, that it was just mistranslation, cultural context, whatever excuse I could conjure. But then, Surah 9:29 came up in my prep. Fight those who do not believe in Allah until they pay the jizya. I had read that verse 100 times before, but that day, it hit different. My hands shook as I tried to copy the passage into my notes. I remember whispering, "Is this really from God?" And instantly, I felt shame, like I'd committed a spiritual crime. But the question wouldn't leave. Me alone. It felt like I was standing at the edge of something ancient and dark, a spiritual war. No one dared to name. One where deception wore the robes of tradition. One where truth wasn't welcomed, only memorized. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. So I started searching in secret. Late at night, when the house was quiet and everyone thought I was praying tahajjud, I'd be on my phone under the covers, watching testimonies from ex-Muslims, from Christians, from atheists even. It was like falling down a tunnel with no end. Every video, every article was a confrontation with questions I'd hidden for years. I read about how women were treated under Sharia in places like Iran and Afghanistan. I started seeing patterns I had never noticed before. Control, suppression, fear. And then, in a Christian forum, I saw a quote that hit me like lightning. Jesus doesn't want slaves. He wants sons. I stared at those words for hours. Something inside me shifted. Could it be that all this time I was trying to earn a love that was never meant to be bought? That phrase became a flame inside me, lighting corners of my heart I didn't even know existed. I began comparing the Quran with the Bible, especially the Gospel of John. When I read, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us," I felt like I had just stepped out of a storm shelter into clear skies. It didn't feel like religion, it felt like revelation. It was no longer about rules, but relationship. But let me be clear, this wasn't just an academic journey, it was a spiritual collision. It felt like I had walked straight into the battlefield of a hidden agenda, one orchestrated by an elite, not of politics, but of spirits. And as crazy as that sounds, I knew I had touched something real, something eternal. But that's when things took a strange turn. I began having what I can only describe as supernatural interruptions, like waking up in the middle of the night, feeling watched, like hearing whispers when I prayed. One night, I looked in the mirror and felt like someone else was staring back at me. I wasn't going crazy. I was awakening, an awakening to something far beyond religion. I felt caught in a spiritual war that had been raging long before I was born. The question was no longer, is this real? The question became, how far are you willing to go for the truth? I came across an online video, just a shaky recording of a man standing in front of a small church talking about his journey out of darkness. And right in the middle of his story, he said something that broke me. Jesus doesn't want slaves. He wants sons. That single sentence shattered everything I thought I knew about God. My whole life had been about submission, fear, performance. But this man, he spoke of Jesus like he was a friend, a father. It didn't sound like religion. It sounded like relationship. And something inside me cried out for it. That night, I opened the Gospel of John for the first time. When I read, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God," I felt something shift in the air around me. It was like a veil had been torn. I knew then. I wasn't just reading. I was being read. I started having dreams, vivid ones. In one of them, I was in a pitch-black room, lost and trembling. Suddenly, a man in white walked toward me. I couldn't see his face, but I felt seen. He said, "Hamza, I know you." I woke up in tears. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about that dream. Something about it felt more real than my waking life. Around that time, I stopped praying at the mosque. I told my family I was feeling sick. The truth was, I couldn't go through the motions anymore. My heart wasn't there. I wanted more than rituals. I wanted truth. And I began to suspect that the real war wasn't Islam versus Christianity. It was deception versus revelation. A spiritual war not fought with swords, but with truth. And Jesus, he wasn't just some prophet. He was calling me into that war. But I wasn't ready to admit it out loud. I was terrified. My whole identity, my community, my bloodline, everything was tied to Islam. Even asking questions could get you labeled, ostracized, or worse. I had seen what happened to people who left. The stories weren't just rumors, beatings, exile, death. I had too much to lose, but still, I kept reading. I devoured the New Testament like a starving man. I read about the Pharisees and saw reflections of the leaders I knew. I read about freedom, grace, love, and I realized this was awakening. The kind that can't be undone once it starts. I was seeing through the deception, and I could never unsee it again. Every night, I prayed silently, not to Allah, but to the man in white from my dreams. I didn't know what to call him yet, but I knew he was real. The peace I felt when I said his name, Jesus, was like nothing I had ever known. But that peace came with a price. I was now living two lives. By day, I was Hamza, the Quran teacher. By night, I was a man searching for the face of God in the silence. And deep down, I knew this double life couldn't last forever. Something was coming. A confrontation, a breaking point. And when it came, it would change everything. It was just past 3 a.m. when I had the dream that changed everything. I was in a vast desert, dry and sunburned, with cracked lips and sand under my fingernails. I was dying, thirsty, abandoned, forgotten. And then, out of the heat haze, he came. The same man in white from before, but this time, I saw his face. His eyes weren't just full of light, they were light. He reached out and said, "Hamza, drink." And in his hands was a cup of water. But when I drank it, it wasn't just water. It was like life entered me. Like every part of me that had been numb or afraid began to breathe. I woke up gasping for air, tears soaking my pillow. And in that moment I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. I couldn't serve two masters. I had to choose, and I chose Jesus. But the decision wasn't just spiritual, it was a declaration of war. Not against my family, but against the deception that had kept us all in chains. I tried to keep things quiet, but secrets don't stay hidden long in a tightly wound religious home. My younger brother borrowed my tablet one night. I had forgotten to close the Bible app. He opened it, he saw the Gospel of John, he saw the notes, and then he saw the dream journal I had been keeping, writing down every encounter I had with the man in white. His face went pale. He didn't say a word, just left the room. An hour later, my father stormed in with fire in his eyes. "Is this true?" he shouted. "You are Christian now?" I tried to explain. I tried to speak from my heart, but he didn't want to hear it. All he saw was betrayal. What followed was one of the darkest moments of my life. My father beat me until I could barely move. My brothers dragged me to the floor and stripped me of my phone, my keys, my identity. "You're not my son anymore," he said. "You're dead to us." They locked me in my room for days. No contact with the outside world. No food unless my mother, in secret, pushed bread under the door. I heard them whispering, talking about sending me away, about exorcisms, about cleansing me. I was branded possessed, deluded, spiritually sick. But here's the strange part. I wasn't afraid. Somewhere inside me, beneath the bruises and the humiliation, I felt an overwhelming peace. It was like Jesus himself was in that room with me, whispering, "I'm still here. They can't take me from you." I spent those nights praying in silence, not in Arabic, not with ritual, but like a child talking to his father. "Jesus," I whispered, "if you really know me, don't let this be the end." And then the second dream came. This time, I was in a desert cave, hiding. The sky outside was blood red, and I could hear distant screams, like the world was collapsing. But inside the cave, Jesus sat beside me. He touched my shoulder and said, "The time is short. Many are asleep, but you must speak." That dream didn't just comfort me, it commissioned me. I knew I had to leave. I knew the elite systems, both spiritual and political, wanted people like me silenced. But truth has a way of breaking through any prison, even if it costs everything. And so I waited. I prayed. And when the opportunity came, I didn't hesitate. My mother slipped me a phone wrapped in a scarf one afternoon when no one was watching. Through trembling fingers, I contacted a Christian man I had spoken to online weeks before. He simply replied, "Come, you're not alone." That message was like oxygen. I didn't know it then, but I was about to walk into a new life, one that would cost me everything I had ever known, but one that would also give me something far more precious, the truth. And I had barely scratched the surface of what that truth would reveal. The night I escaped, the air felt electric, like something in the spirit realm was watching, waiting. I slipped out barefoot, my heart pounding like war drums in my chest. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every gust of wind whispered my name. I had nothing but a backpack, a hoodie, and that secondhand phone still wrapped in my mother's scarf. When I reached the alley behind the mosque, I saw him, a man waiting in an old car with the lights off. He opened the door and simply said, "Let's go." I didn't ask questions. I just got in. That was the moment the chains broke. I looked back once at the street where I grew up, where I memorized the Quran, where I buried every doubt, and I knew I'd never see it again. My body was free, but my soul, it was still unraveling. The safe house was nothing fancy, just a small room above a garage owned by a quiet Christian couple. But to me, it felt like heaven. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without fear of being watched or corrected. I was handed a Bible that night. I held it like it was a newborn child, carefully, almost trembling, and I read. For hours, pages blurred with tears as I devoured stories of grace, mercy, and a Savior who didn't demand perfection but offered love. I read Jesus' words and felt them pierce through years of religious fear. "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest." That wasn't just poetry, that was rescue. And in that little room, surrounded by silence and flickering candlelight, I got on my knees and said a prayer I had never dared to pray. "Jesus, I'm yours." The prayer wasn't polished. I didn't know the right words, but it was raw, honest. I wasn't submitting out of duty. I was surrendering out of desperation. And in that moment, something supernatural happened. It felt like a veil was torn, like 100 lies shattered all at once. I didn't just feel peace, I became peace. And in that peace, I saw something, like a vision, but deeper. I saw people, millions of them walking in chains, blindfolded, following shadows, thinking they were light. And then I saw a massive throne surrounded by darkness. And behind it, not a man, but a force, a presence. It was the spiritual elite, not politicians or bankers, but ancient powers manipulating everything, religion, media war, technology. I knew then this was a spiritual war. And Jesus wasn't just my savior. He was my commander. Weeks passed. I attended underground Bible studies, mostly with ex-Muslims like me. We laughed, we wept. We told stories of rejection, persecution, and hope. For the first time, I had a family that wasn't bound by blood, but by truth. The day I got baptized was cold, but my heart burned with fire. As I went under the water, I saw flashes of my old life. Prayers, beatings, fear, confusion. And when I came up, it was like breathing for the first time. I wasn't Hamza, the teacher, anymore. I wasn't the disgraced son. I was something new, a child of the living God. And though I had lost my earthly family, I had found something eternal, love without condition. But this wasn't a fairy tale. My new life didn't erase the pain, it transformed it. I still cried for my mother. I still dreamed of my little brother. But now I carried a deeper calling. I knew Jesus had rescued me for a reason. I knew the revelation he gave me wasn't just for me. It was for anyone still trapped in systems of control, whether religious, political, or digital. And as I stared out the window one night, watching the city lights blink like distant fires, I felt Jesus whisper again, "Many are still thirsty. Go, give them the water." It's been 2 years now. 2 years since I left everything, my name, my family, my old identity, buried in the waters of baptism. I live under a different name now. New documents, new place, new life. But the fire inside me, that hasn't changed. If anything, it's stronger. Every morning I wake up, I remember what Jesus showed me in those dreams. I remember the vision of blindfolded crowds, the thrones of deception, and the war raging in silence beneath our politics, our media, even our religions. This world isn't just confused, it's asleep. But I'm awake now, and I know my mission, to help others wake up too, especially those who feel trapped like I once did, serving a system, not a savior. I work quietly, online mostly, encrypted chats, private groups voice, calls with men and women in the Middle East, North Africa, Europe, even here in the States. People like me. Some are imams, some are hijabi girls raised in fear. Others are secret seekers, watching testimonies with the volume down, hiding their doubts even from themselves. I tell them my story. I show them love. I let them ask the questions they were never allowed to speak aloud. And when the moment comes, I tell them the truth that set me free. Jesus didn't come to give you rules. He came to give you life. You should see the look on their faces when they realize that. It's like watching a soul take its first breath. Sometimes I still grieve. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. There are nights I wake up crying, thinking of my mother's cooking or my father's old laugh before the anger took him. I wonder if they ever think of me, if they wonder where I am. But grief doesn't control me anymore. It teaches me. It reminds me why I fight this spiritual war. Because the cost of silence is too high. Every time I see a soul come to life in Jesus, I know it was worth it. Every scar, every tear, every lonely birthday. The deception that once enslaved me now fuels my resolve to see others set free. And the more I speak, the more I realize I'm not the only one. God is waking people up all over the world. Something big is happening. And the elite, they feel it too. You can see it in the chaos, the polarization, the censorship, the moral confusion, the rise of AI, transhumanism, mass surveillance, global alliances. This isn't just political, it's prophetic. The systems of control are tightening. But with every squeeze, more people are waking up. I believe we're in a time of revelation, and not just in the spiritual sense. The veils are being torn off, the lies are collapsing, and in the midst of it all, Jesus is still whispering to the lost, "I know you." That message changed my life. Now it's my calling to share it, loudly, boldly, and without shame. So here I am, not as the man I used to be, but as the man I was always meant to become. I may never see my father again. I may never return to the city I once called home, but I found a new family, a spiritual tribe, and most of all, I found freedom, real freedom, not the kind promised by religion or governments, but the kind that only truth can bring. If you're watching this and you feel the same pull I once felt, don't ignore it. That's not fear, that's awakening. And the truth? The truth is a person. His name is Jesus, and he's waiting for you just like he waited for me. Now that you've heard my story, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt like this world is being pulled by invisible strings? Like something deeper is going on behind the headlines, the politics, the culture wars? Because it is. I died to my old life so I could finally see the truth. And what I saw wasn't just personal, it was prophetic. We are in a spiritual war. A war for minds, hearts, and souls. There's an elite force working overtime to keep people blind, obedient, and afraid. But Jesus, he's calling people out of the system. He's calling people like you and me to wake up. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a dream, a moment, a feeling that made you question everything? Share your experience in the comments. I read everyone. You're not alone anymore. And if this message stirred something inside you, don't leave without subscribing to this channel, Truth from Beyond, and hitting the notification bell. Because what's coming next is even more revealing. In the next video, I'll share another testimony of someone who met Jesus in a war zone and was shown the truth about global powers and the real reason behind the chaos we're seeing today. Click it now, don't wait. I'm Hamza. Thank you for staying with me till the end. And remember this, the truth always finds those who are ready to receive it.